So Anastasia, you've got the recording running, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Just waiting if it can be 5:30.
Joanne's mailing it. It's $70. That's 2 parts, Jordan. And I'm not getting a fake one.
Shut your mic off, please, Melanie.
Sorry.
All right. Kenmore City Council is now in session. We're going to adjourn into executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101, subsection I, pending and potential litigation, and B, consideration of real estate acquisition. We are going to be in executive session for approximately an hour and a half. So we will be back in time for the regular council meeting to start at 7 o'clock. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Just from the agenda, it won't be a full hour and a half. There will be some time just before 7 that we'll get out because there's possible action relating to the executive session that we'll do before the 7 o'clock.
That's fine.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we are now adjourned into executive session. All right. So we have 1, 2, 3. 4, 5. 6 and 7. All right, we are still in executive session, but we're in the public portion where the chair would like to have someone make a motion to move to approve settlement agreement relating to the lawsuit filed under King County Superior Court, cause number 20-2-16529-8 SEA, and authorize the city manager to sign the settlement agreement and take all necessary acts to implement same. Is there a motion?
At one issue, I thought we were back in open session.
We are in open session, but we're still in executive.
No, I think to clarify, we're still in the special meeting.
Special meeting, yes.
Correct. And we're in open session. That is
Right.
correct.
Thank you.
So I'm looking for someone to make the motion,
I so move.
and I will second. So the motion in front of us is to approve a settlement agreement relating to the lawsuit filed under King County Superior Court, cause number 20-2-16529-8 SEA, and authorize the city manager to sign the settlement agreement and take all necessary acts to implement the same. City attorney, can we have an explanation what this is about for the public?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The settlement agreement relates to a parking dispute over at the Kenmore Village area. And the settlement agreement simply identifies 3 parties to a parking easement agreement and how they can resolve their parking differences in the future.
All right, so there's a motion in front of us. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, can I get the clerk to please take the roll?
Councilmember O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous.
All right, if there are no objections, we will adjourn from executive session and come back at 7 o'clock.
Hi, Sarah. If
Why
that-
can't I do this?
Hi, Sarah.
This. Wait, what? Next.
Hi, Sarah. Sarah?
All right. Is everybody back?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't see with screen sharing going on, so I'm not sure. There we go. All right, Councilmember File. 1, 2, 3. All right. So Kenmore City Council is back in session. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember File,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Here.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Here.
Councilmember Kugler,
Here.
Mayor Baker,
Here?
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember O'Kane,
Here.
all here.
All right, if you could please join me in the flag salute. Our city manager doesn't have a flag up tonight, so I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
If there are no objections,
Yeah, I'd like to add one topic to the agenda, and that would be to discuss whether we might want to support second substitute House Bill 1083, which is an act concerning relocation assistance for tenants of closed or converted manufactured mobile home parks.
so if there are no objections, we will add this to the end of our meeting. Hearing none, if there are no other changes to the agenda will stand approved as modified. Next item on the agenda is a presentation, transit-oriented development partnership with at Kenmore Park and Ride area with the Bus Rapid Transit 522 and 145th Street corridor involving the city of Kenmore, King County Metro, Sound Transit, St. Vincent de Paul, and presented by Miss Owsley, one and only Assistant City Manager.
Can't hear anything.
Is Miss Owsley with us?
I don't see Nancy here at the moment. Perhaps one of our other colleagues can step in for a moment.
Sure. I'll try to fill in. Rob, do you want to do it?
Let's go for it, Brian. Thanks.
I'll do the best I can. I wasn't prepared to do the presentation, but tonight is a opportunity for us to give you an update on Sound Transit's project and the Bus Rapid Transit project, along with King County Metro's property. Tonight we have with us from King County, Sarah Lovell. Actually, let me see who else we have here. I see Juan from Sound Transit is here.
Somebody's got something going on in the background. Can we get mics muted if you're not presenting?
Excuse me, Sarah with King County. Could you please mute Mike?
Sarah, can you hear us? There you go. And is Kathy Leota on this call too as well?
I'm here as well.
Okay. Oh, it says Sound Transit. And Sloan Dawson, is Sloan here?
Yes, I'm here.
So there's 3 or 4 people from Sound Transit here, and King County Metro we're here. So we've been working with this team for a while now, over a year. We've have had plenty of meetings, lots of meetings, which included workshops with the community, including the nearby property owners of the St. Vincent de Paul property and the Montessori school property. And I'm not sure for certain if anybody from any of those properties are on the call right now. And I think at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Who would that be? Would that be you?
And just as an update, Nancy Ousley is on the way.
Sarah, you're muted.
Yeah, it looks like Sarah's having some technical difficulties today. I think Juan was going to do many of the first slides in any case.
So we do have a slide presentation. Does somebody have access to that they could share?
I could do that. Let me
It's in the agenda, so we all have it.
I see Nancy Ousley has made it. Nancy, are you, did you have an opening remark that you wanted to give the council? Oops, you're muted.
Very sorry, had some technical difficulties. But I assume we're ready to begin with the agenda item. Yes, and we are, really excited to be able to spend some time at tonight's meeting discussing the opportunities at the northeast corner of 73rd Avenue and SR 522. We have property owners with an interest in redevelopment and the impetus of Sound Transit's bus rapid transit service and parking structure construction that are all coming together. And what it means, it's a chance to advance multiple city goals and ambitions. So King County Metro, Sound Transit, St. Vincent de Paul, and the city are working on a partnership agreement.
Oh gosh.
To take advantage
I
of
can't hear anything.
Sarah,
This
you're
makes no
live.
sense.
We can hear you, Sarah.
We can hear you
We can
now.
all hear you.
Sarah, okay, she's muted.
Hello?
Take advantage of this moment in time. And Sarah Lovell of King County Metro, Juan Califf, and Kathy Leota of Sound Transit, and they may be joined by other members of the team. And our city team are here tonight to discuss what's been learned since we've been working on this since 2019. St. Vincent de Paul is the other key property owner that we've been working with. They're not able to join us tonight. Now we see the city's role as both visionary and regulatory with our ability to look at transit-oriented development regulations. And it really is our community that's going to be living with the results of the partnership and the projects. Just like our experience with downtown development, when the time and partners are at the right place, it's important to take advantage of it. So as the presentation goes on, you'll notice that we're looking at elements of a partnership agreement that we're working on. And if the council is inclined to give us a nod or some indication of some advance authorization to proceed, we would certainly welcome that. But we will have the opportunity to come back at other points in the project to discuss this with you. So it's a great opportunity, great potential partners, and we are obviously in touch with other adjacent property owners as well. So thank you, and I will turn it over to Sarah at this point.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, thank goodness. Okay.
I can go ahead and share the screen, Sarah.
Do you mind sharing the screen? I don't even know what's happening, but I appreciate that you can hear me. Okay, fantastic. Yes. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save you all from the sounds of my house, hopefully. I know I'm not. Anyways, well, I am King County Metro's transit-oriented development manager, and here with me tonight, we have Juan Calaf, who is the transit-oriented development lead for this project for Sound Transit. We have Sloan Dawson, who Sloan is he's the manager of the land use planners in the transit-oriented development department at Sound Transit. And then we have Kathy Leota, who is the project manager for the I-522 BRT project. And so
And can I mention that Kathy Leota is also a Kenmore resident?
Oh, that's important. Yes. And so we have been working together on this project for the better part of 2 years. We all came together quite a long time ago now and realized what a fantastic opportunity this project presented because of the sort of the culmination of a lot of different important large project owners, including King County Metro and Sound Transit with their ST3 project here. We also took a look at the fantastic opportunity that sort of our ownership, our relationship with St. Vincent de Paul, and the supportive city of Kenmore sort of set up for us here. And so tonight we're going to walk through a little bit of the project history related to Sound Transit's ST3 522 BRT project and all of the fantastic planning work they've done to really set up this opportunity. And then we are going to talk a little bit about implementation and the early partnering agreement that we have all been working on for the last couple of months to sort of bring us from the vision that was developed through a workshop series that took place in 2019 and early 2020 to hopefully implementing the fantastic project at King County Metro's Kenmore Park and Ride. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Juan, who will walk us through some of the history.
Okay, can everybody see the screen? I just want to make sure. Can everybody see the slideshow right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So thanks, Sarah. Good evening, council members. Again, my name is Juan Calaf, and I'm with the Office of Land Use Planning and Development at Sound Transit. I'm going to kick off the presentation by giving a quick orientation to folks from some of the key findings of our planning work. Again, I think Nancy mentioned it, but this has been a 2-year-long effort, which is part of our TOD planning process, and it's included in the report that was shared with staff the late part of last year, and also I believe that was shared with council prior to this meeting. So first, some context on the existing conditions. As you will see on the screen, the site is the Kenmore Park and Ride, which is in consideration here. It's currently operated by King County. King County Metro owns the eastern portion of the site, which is that 5-acre parcel, which includes 400 surface stalls, and also the transit program, which is 7 layover bus spaces and some other active bus uses at the moment. And they're also in a long-term lease relationship with St. Vincent de Paul, which is the site to the west. And it includes an access road that services both sites. This also includes the remaining balance of the park and ride stalls, which is the 227 stalls. Combined, if you add those two up, it's what's there today, 627 stalls. So moving on. Another thing I wanted to say is that site pre-COVID was under what's considered 100% utilization by early morning. So it's a very heavily used park and ride. So this next image shows our representative project, which is where we started off before we initiated this planning partner series with all agencies here. The representative projects includes a provision for a 300 stall park and ride facility. And this assumes a single purpose structure, as you see here, if there was no further planning that would have been done. And in this case, what you see here is considering that the footprint and envelope that was developed for the parking facility would displace about 120 stalls. In order to achieve 300 net, we would be building a 420 stall facility, which is a 5-story facility that you see there. And this assumes a net 300 increase in transit commuter parking stalls across the two sites when it's all combined. So what was the calculus here is that was not taken into consideration is what is the opportunity cost of leaving the remainder of the land around as surface stalls. So this brings us to what we did in the early visioning planning work, which explores the site's potential to become a hub for mobility and the community uses. So in our visioning work, we hosted the 3-part workshop series, and we're super grateful for the city to have hosted these at the Kenmore City Hall, the beautiful Kenmore City Hall. And we had different folks represented there. Of course, Sound Transit was leading those. There was a Metro there, of course, but also the affordable housing community, ARCH, Regional Coalition for Housing. We also had King County DCHS, which is the Department of Community and Human Services, and St. Vincent de Paul, which is one of the property owners that we've already mentioned, but also some of the adjacent property owners mentioned here, which was Columbia Crest and Schnitzelbank property owners. So that was a great way to start looking at how we would be understanding the potential for overall parking facility, but also the TOD vision for the place here. In this next image shows the vision that resulted from the workshops, which pointed participants in the direction of creating this mobility hub, what we call the integrated mobility hub concept, which essentially consolidates the parking program into one structure, but also utilizes the ground level of that structure for the King County Metro buses to be expanded. So it would be going from 7 layovers, which it has today, to an expanded 9 layover capacity facility. So this image shows that, and it also shows how the concept would be located towards the southeast of the property in order to essentially clear potential for future TOD to the west. So this configuration, essentially, as you see on the screen, would yield a total combined parking of 953 stalls across the 2 sites, and importantly, is consolidating the site to become the basis of the TOD work that I'm about to show on the next slides. So in the following slide here, we have a the next 2 slides are going to show the trade-offs between maintaining the stalls or otherwise pursuing transit into TOD. So the rectangles that you see, the pink rectangle, it's essentially a component of TOD, a building that would accommodate up to 100 units, in this case, of ideal size for affordable housing, but it's also preserving some of those transit stalls in the northeast of the site, in this case 59, as you can see. In the next slide, you start seeing the potential that would exist when the TOD could be realized across multiple sites. So not only the existing KC Metro, a 5-acre site, but also the site leased by St. Vincent de Paul, as well as the corner site that St. Vincent has currently if it was redeveloped and repositioned. So this would yield about upwards of 400 units, as you can see, could be accommodated in this assemblage of sites. It would be resulting in 4 buildings. And it's worth noting that the combined stalls there would be over 1,000 stalls. Of course, about 40% of the stalls here would be that have to be dedicated as per code currently to TOD. And we really think that the key here to making TOD work while also increasing the supply of parking available to commuters above and beyond today's total stall count is sharing parking. And this would be shared between the residential and the transit commuter uses. So I think think that was worth saying that shared parking is something that we continue to explore. And in summary, before I pass it up to Sarah, I just wanted to say that the workshops were truly great, and they foster a vision of what we call the coordinated development plan. And this is an effort to balance the mobility functions with the mixed use development and the affordable housing, which we know that it's a priority for council. And this would further the vision that Kenmore has to create an active, equitable, and well-connected downtown. It's also important to note that, however, as you can see, this image is one of the renderings that was done initially, but it's still very conceptual, and it's contingent on the partnerships moving forward. So I think what's important to say also is that we work very closely with the city so far and the KC Metro and other stakeholders to really understand the feasibility of this plan concept. So that's included in the report for your review. And also, lastly, I'll say before I'll turn it over to Sarah now, which she's going to go over the TOD feasibility report and explain a little bit on how that it's informing our thinking and strategy moving forward as we start developing early partnering agreement. Thank you. Sarah?
Yep, thank you, Juan. That was great. All right, so I'm going to jump into some of the key findings from that transit-oriented development plan report that you all should have received a while back. Juan, am I advancing the slides, or are you? I think you are, right?
I think I can do it, Sarah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So on the next slide, some of the key findings of that report, and I think it's also important just to remind everyone that this report was done pre-COVID, and so we have some very good takeaways from it. It really did inform our thinking, and as we think through how we might put out a future offering, we are looking to some of the findings of this report. But certainly, I think one of the things we've talked about is that the development community would certainly truth this for us in their responses. But some of the key findings, importantly, is that apartment demand was steady, that pedestrian-oriented retail, while desirable, is still difficult in that situation, in that environment. And that, I think importantly, all of these scenarios assumed that integrated transit facility. They also assumed that any developer would be delivering this project on a standard 4-year cycle. So, I think there's a lot of room here for different ways of implementing a future development that certainly could be phased over time. But, I think largely our takeaway was that this would be primarily driven by residential development with ground floor retail or commercial. And we do know from conversations with the city of Kenmore that at the time that this was done, there was certainly interest in having office development, although that would be something we would put out to the market and see, and certainly would want to truth with folks through the development of project requirements and desires, things like that. So next slide. And so in thinking about the outcome of the workshops and the vision that we all developed through that process, which was really compelling, I think, and certainly seemed to have support from all of the folks in that stakeholder workshop, we were really thinking about, in a post-COVID environment, how we could preserve and deliver a project that sort of met that vision. And I think, one of the things we did talk a whole lot about with city staff and amongst ourselves is that the Sound Transit Design Bid Build project would primarily would deliver this really fantastic integrated transit facility. And there was potential for one project, one development pad for transit-oriented development. But actually, by sort of changing the delivery strategy and moving towards a King County Metro-led development project, we could leverage the relationship that we have with St. Vincent de Paul if they were willing. And we had this opportunity to really bring to market a much larger opportunity to think through, or to offer to the development community the opportunity to use a larger piece of property potentially to bring about fantastic transit-oriented development and also meet the transit infrastructure needs that we both have as transit agencies that plan to operate in Kenmore for a long time. The other thing that I think is important to note is that the originally conceived notion of the integrated transit facility was a very capital intensive project, both for King County Metro and Sound Transit. And so given the financial realities that we both find ourselves in, the original concept of King County Metro contributing a large capital infusion to that facility, and Sound Transit sort of being in a position to potentially move forward with a pretty expensive integrated design project, may not be possible at this time. And so moving towards this other alternative delivery strategy where we effectively can define what we have to offer to the development community and ask them to perform seemed like a really fantastic way to meet the moment and see if we could get the project that would deliver the vision that we had all agreed on or all got really excited about in that workshop series. And so the conclusion, which I just kind of talked about, is that the integrated mobility hub results in a really capital intensive project, but it is a really fantastic vision that we all are really committed to trying to deliver. That at this point, King County Metro certainly and Sound Transit would be looking for partnership in order to deliver a project that would require that kind of capital infusion that we had envisioned in the workshop. And so, you know, in what we're talking about today, in moving towards this alternative delivery strategy, we're looking to partner with a private developer to do that. And that what I'm going to get to next, this early partnering agreement that we are talking to you about tonight, is really sort of the bridging document between that vision that we developed through that workshop series and a future development offering. It is basically a document that gets into defining the different partners, the roles and the goals that we all have, and a timeline and strategy to how we would get to a place where we could implement this project we're all so excited about. And here I was going to pause and just see if folks had questions. If not, I'm happy to jump right in and we can take questions at the end. Okay, well, hearing none, should we move on? Okay. So right now, the early partnering agreement is being developed. It is in a draft form, but the potential partners to that agreement are the City of Kenmore, Sound Transit, St. Vincent de Paul, who is the adjacent property owner that we, King County Metro, have a lease with currently, and then King County Metro, who owns the Kenmore Park and Ride. Importantly, in support roles include King County's DCHS, who are our housing experts, and Arch, who will really help us think through a strategic approach to affordable housing across these sites. So that's work we still have in front of us. Next slide. The agreement, the objective of the agreement is to really identify what decisions each party needs to make in order to reach a place where we can jump into a joint offering and develop content to support those decisions. So this is really a period of time where we're working to create content for that future offering and support each other in the decisions that we all need to make in order to be ready to offer this property out to the market. And the goals of that agreement specifically are to develop a shared set of project requirements, to reach some concurrence on preferred development outcomes and areas of flexibility. Juan had mentioned that we think a really key component of getting a fantastic TOD outcome here is really thinking through the opportunity for shared parking. And I think from a transit agency perspective, one of the things we mean by finding areas of flexibility is, you know, whether or not we can be flexible on ownership, whether or not we can be flexible about whether the parking has to be structured in one spot or dispersed across the site, things like that. So that's generally what we're talking about. We also want to identify assets or resources that could be included in that future offering, develop an implementation schedule and a timeline that we all agree on, and that will include decision milestones and things like that, and then document our concurrence. So that is really the goal of this agreement. And then the proposed roles for the 4 primary partners. For the City of Kenmore, Kenmore is really importantly, the project visionary. They are there to help us really think through and co-develop project requirements that will help realize that vision for the project. Importantly, also, we'd like them to identify a preferred permitting path for a project like this. There are probably many ways that could come together, and we would look to their expertise for that, that advice and information. King County Metro, we in this agreement will be the lead in developing the content for the future solicitation and for actually running that future solicitation. So in addition to being a potential future owner, definitely an operator and a funder of a future project there, we're going to lead this effort. And then Sound Transit will partner on the development of the project requirements, because this project importantly needs to meet the commitments that were made in ST3 to the city of Kenmore. And so Sound Transit will be there for that. And then also as a potential future owner, operator certainly, and potentially a funder of the parking improvements here. And then lastly, St. Vincent de Paul, they are the adjacent property owner, and what we would be looking, or what we would be hoping the role they would want to take would be to explore whether or not they could participate in this future offering. And then if they do choose to explore or to partner on a future offering, we would be looking to them to help co-develop project requirements and business terms for themselves, so that whatever project we will select eventually would meet their needs as well. And so there are a lot of major decisions in front of all of us that the work that this agreement sets out in front of us will help to answer and support. Importantly, Sound Transit's 522 BRT project is in the midst of an environmental process, and so confirmation of that environmental process is really important. However, a future developer would likely need an update of the SEPA to support whatever their development vision would be there. There's the Sound Transit board realignment, which is expected this summer. Metro is looking to identify a path to leverage its land value as a contribution to this project. And so figuring out how to do that is something that we are very excited about, but also have some work in front of us to do. Again, identifying the preferred permitting path for the city of Kenmore, and coming up with a preferred affordable housing strategy is really important across these sites as well. And then lastly, for St. Vincent de Paul, they would need to develop their own set of business terms, and also would need to get buy-off from their leadership, allowing them to move forward with this idea or this development offering. And then this is a potential schedule. So the big red sign is that this was put together before COVID, and I think that is important because things around us have changed a bit. But we are right now sort of in the final phases of developing that early partnering agreement. We would hope to conclude it by the end of the first quarter of this year. And then really the major effort that this agreement calls for would take place in the second and third quarters of 2021. So that would be developing a scope and an agreement on a future offering, supporting St. Vincent de Paul to really define how big this offering is. And then we would hope to do something like a developers forum or a request for expressions of interest to seek counsel from the development community on how best to offer this property out to them. We would hope to finalize an RFP and any agreements between the partners to support that RFP in the first quarter of 22, and release an RFP out to the market in that second quarter of next year. Assuming negotiations last somewhere between 6 and 12 months, this would set us up to deliver a project at Kenmore roughly in time with the 522 BRT delivery in 2025 or 2026. So it's not exactly synced up, but it is very, very close. That's it. At this point, we welcome your questions.
Questions? Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, that was a great presentation. Thank you. And so much work has clearly gone on over the last couple of years. It's exciting. I had two questions. One was I was curious whether the owner of the Schnitzel Bank property was not in the partnership agreement kind of strategically, or did they not want to be? So that's one question. And then the second question is, there was a brief presentation, a slide that showed like 100 units and then one that showed about 400 units. Was there anything kind of in between that might allow for what I think is pretty important, which is to have that full 300 additional stalls? I'm not quite sure how the parking sharing would work, given that somebody who lives there would probably be taking transit, so their car would be there. And so would all the people trying to use it as a park and ride. So I'm not quite sure what we're thinking in terms of sharing. So those are the two questions.
All right. Well, so the first question, anyone feel free to jump in, Nancy or Juan or Sloan, but the Schnitzelbach folks, they participated. They were participating in the workshop series, and they're certainly watching this development. They, I think, were hesitant to jump in at this point. And so that's why they're not in this partnership agreement at this point. But certainly they were very engaged in the workshop series. They do know what's going on, or at least they did when last we were engaged with them. And I think they are likely watching how this goes. So yes, that's what we know about them.
Yeah, and we'll continue to stay in touch with them, obviously.
Yeah. And then in terms of your second question, whether there would be something between the 108 units and the 415. So, one of the things that we have been talking with St. Vincent de Paul about, King County Metro has a lease for parking stalls on one part of their property that currently houses 227 parking stalls for Metro. And certainly they could decide to participate with just the surface parking stalls versus their store, or vice versa. I think my perspective is that it's a more compelling development opportunity if it's cohesive. Whether that includes their store or not, that's for them, but it would be interesting if it was their store that got developed and then the surface parking in the middle. In terms of whether that would allow a developer to then deliver an additional 300 stalls, so 927 stalls of just transit-only parking. What we found, we certainly could put that out to the market, and I think they would tell us. But what we seem to find, at least in the feasibility work that was done, was that there is a trade-off. There's a question that's being posed to you all, in that it looks like that sort of is the crux of the decision. Like you can certainly get 300 net stalls of parking, but you probably do that rather than get a really fantastic TOD outcome. So it's either or, probably. So, but again, one of the benefits of this strategy is offering it out to the market, because developers are creative and they definitely work towards their bottom line, and they may have something that we haven't even thought about. So, I think that is where us working together in partnership to really think through how best to put out this offering and how to talk about what's required and what's desired and all of that really does make a difference in what we might receive here.
Any other questions? In your presentation, did I see that we're looking at BRT on 522 now in 26? Or is that the parking garage in 26?
Kathy, Leota.
I can chime in on this one. So right now we're looking at this is all pre-COVID, pre-realignment, looking at starting in 2025 with some of the construction going into 2026. That's kind of our base point at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I heard 25. I hadn't heard 26 yet.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I want to say first off, I think that I'm excited that everybody's coming together and working so hard on this, because I think we identified this a couple of years ago as a really unique opportunity. So I appreciate everybody coming to the table and putting in the work you've put in so far. Maybe to maybe address Councilmember Shrubnik's earlier question, maybe some of what the public's thinking about. Is there any chance that any of you folks could talk a little bit about some of the similar projects that have been done with transit, with mixed use TOD transit stations, like we've seen in Kirkland and some other places where they've had shared parking, and you know this isn't a new model. So maybe you could point to some of those other, talk briefly about some of those other projects that we've had for a while now.
Yeah, I feel free to jump in if anyone wants to. So, I think what we have seen in transit-oriented development projects across the region is that typically they do lead to a slightly different use of parking. And, King County Metro has the right size parking tool, which was used in some of its analysis. What we have seen in downtown in Kirkland, for example, is that we actually overbuilt some parking. And so in wanting to make sure that, we didn't underbuild parking there, we actually at this point could probably have done with less parking, probably on the residential part, because as you make that choice to live right near great transit, you may make other choices about, your car usage and things like that. And so while I'm happy to come back to you with more information about other projects, I don't have a whole lot off the top of my head. I can speak to projects within the city of Seattle, but those are different, certainly. And for those too, those are, some of them are not being parked at all. Others are being parked at, much more aggressive rates than what would be required under code, or at least for existing before or in slightly older developments. But what we have seen, in Kirkland specifically, is what I'm most familiar with off the top of my head, is that we have actually seen that the parking that was delivered there, 10 years later, is not being used as much as we thought it might be. So I think that's good when we think about the opportunity for shared parking and what might happen. I do appreciate the comment about, what might happen with folks that have cars and then aren't they in the TOD so they can jump on the bus and leave their car parked, and finding the right mix of uses is certainly a really important part of making shared parking work. But I think what we were really trying to express is that in all these scenarios, you do have a pretty big increase in parking. And if we can really try to best utilize that investment, there may well be a way to get a really fantastic development outcome and meet the transportation or the transit needs, or the needs of the transit riders. It's maybe a better way to put that.
And when you overbuild parking, that's not a cheap mistake to make. You're talking
Not-
$30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a space if it's structured. It's not.
Right.
It's an expensive mistake when you overbuild that. And so that's just something to keep in mind also. But I'm just excited at the idea of bringing, people into a place that right now is just primarily, other than St. Vincent de Paul's and the Central Bank and all of that, it's just parking lots. Parking lots serve a purpose, but they don't contribute to the community per se. Bringing people in there, and if we can keep St. Vincent de Paul there, that would be great. But if we can actually utilizing the land for people instead of cars, really excites me, and I think that it could really add some life to that neck of the woods too, which I'm excited about. So thank you.
Yeah, the potential to have a South Kirkland Park and Ride in Kenmore, maybe not with the parking that you have over there with less parking, certainly is exciting, a very exciting prospect. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you all very much.
Thank you to Sarah and Juan and everyone else, and thanks to council. Any comments on what you heard about the early partnership agreement? Are we on the right track with that?
I'm seeing thumbs up. I'm seeing nods of heads that, yep. Yes, Councilmember Kugler.
There was one detail that I just wanted to get clarification on. I think this is a really exciting opportunity and partnership with several organizations, which I know is not easy to coordinate. So that's really exciting. I also think I'm super excited about the possibility of bringing more affordable housing to Kenmore. Someone I thought mentioned 5 stories, and I'm just looking at the presentation and it says 4 stories, and I know that's a pretty big difference. So I just want to get clarification on that. Is it 4 stories or 5? Do you know?
For residential?
Is it, well, in total?
Maybe Juan could address that.
Okay, one.
There is if you look in the study, there is a 5-story over a podium for the residential component, but that's to explore the development maximum capacity. That is not to say that that's how the ultimate, offering or development will look like, but that was using the code that that Kenmore has today there for the TOD overlay district.
Councilwoman, were you referring to the parking garage though? The parking garage capacity?
That's where I thought I heard 5 stories mentioned.
Yeah. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the representative project, I believe, assumes 5 stories of construction, and the integrated project is a 4-story structure because of the larger floor plate of that structure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
It's worth pointing out that the ground floor would be a double height to accommodate the bus program underneath. So that's why it's like that.
I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to all the work that Metro is doing, and also Sound Transit in trying to make a whole lot of doing a lot of research to help us make some really tough decisions. And Kathy, it's good to see that you're part of Kenmore and right in the middle of the mix. So
Yeah, it's definitely my neighborhood, so it's exciting.
thank you all very much.
Yeah, I have one last thing, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor,
yes,
if I could.
Deputy Mayor.
I want to thank both Metro and Sound Transit for broadening their view of what their mission is, because just 10 years ago, both agencies were just transit. Their job was to move people, on buses or on rail from one place to the next with very little regard to what was around their infrastructure. And I really appreciate the shift that both agencies have made towards looking at TOD and looking at housing and really how those two things go together, because the two things, they're connected. So I just want to thank, and I hope that change in focus will continue, because it's important. If you build something and ignore the land around it, you're not going to get the ridership that you want. So thank you for that, and I hope that will continue.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much, Council, and to Metro and Sound Transit for joining us tonight.
All right.
Thank you.
Next
having
item
us.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, public comment.
We want to welcome all our community members to the council's meeting. In this forum, the council cannot engage or dialogue with the public because during this segment, the primary role of the council is to listen. All comments must be addressed to the mayor and the city council. Please use the raise hand feature right now if you wish to speak. I will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name, city of residence for the record, and keep your comments to the allotted 3 minutes. Your time cannot be granted to another, and your clock time will not be reset unless there are extenuating circumstances and the presiding officer has expressly allowed it. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you again for taking the time to express your comments. I see many hands raised. The first person to speak will be Mr. John Peoples.
Yes, John Peoples, Kenmore. Good evening, City Council and Kenmore neighbors and guests. First, this past Saturday, I visited Log Boom Park and discovered that it shares its name with Tracy Owen, a former King County councilman and Kenmore resident. Rather than replace the Log Boom name with Mr. Owens, the King County Council saw fit to allow the park to share these two names. The same should be done with Squires Landing Park. Watson Squire owned some of the land that now makes up parts of our city, and his stewardship of the land made it possible for us to enjoy its use today and well into the future. I understand that the park's naming was done by a vote of the people, and the Squire name won fair and square. No name change is appropriate except by the same process. But why the binary choice? If you must add a new name, why not share the space and retain the current one chosen by the people? Wouldn't it be more graceful to share? I think so, and I implore the City Council to not remove Mr. Squire's name from the park. Second, it is with great disappointment that I find that the city maintains a link to the racist propaganda opinion piece called The White Supremacy Pyramid on its Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion webpage. I will pursue the aim of having it removed as it does not promote DEI, but rather stifles it. The DEI training is little different than the larger-than-life figure speaking out from the enormous screen in the 1984 Apple Macintosh Super Bowl commercial. Do know that Kenmore residents who care about fair treatment of all city residents will endeavor peacefully to ensure that the worst abuses of the DEI training are discontinued and removed from the taxpayer-owned city website. In the meantime, I'll add 3 names that the quote, Right to Breathe website omits: Daniel Shaver, Justine Damon, and federal police officer Patrick Underwood. Lastly, I would like to once again thank the council for allowing us to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and publicly commit ourselves to our fellow Americans and strive for liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. I'd like to call the next series of guests in this order: Jeremiah Ingersoll, followed by S. Valens 224. I'm assuming Stacy Valenzuela, Rose Hendricks, and David Morton. Jeremiah Ingersoll. Jeremiah.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Jeremiah Ingersoll, and I'm a lieutenant with the North Shore Fire Department and president of the North Shore Firefighters Union Local 2459. I'm here on behalf of the 42 members in my union about a proposed merger between the North Shore and Woodinville Fire Departments.
Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
We can't have that.
I am so sorry to the public commenter. I just needed to alert you that under state law, the city is not allowed to take public comment on a pending ballot measure. It is actually illegal for us to allow it. However, if the city wishes to discuss this issue at a future agenda, they can do so only with specific notice provisions. Again, I'm sorry we can't have this type of comment, and I truly apologize for interrupting you.
That's no problem.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, state your point.
Just a question, point of clarification, I guess. is the merger actually a pending ballot measure, or is it just theoretically a ballot measure at this point?
It's my understanding it's on the April ballot.
No, that was the aim. I just don't know if they've taken the final vote to actually put it on the ballot.
I'm not sure it's been finalized either.
We checked today and it was not on the ballot as of today. But I can't be sure that it's not on the ballot at this point.
And can I ask, if it doesn't need to be actually physically on the website of a ballot, if an action was taken, such as a resolution authorizing the ballot to move forward, then that would be a pending ballot measure.
Point of order. For a point of information pertaining to this public comment. I believe that Mr. Ingersoll represents a firefighters union, and as a representative of a union can speak on behalf of union formed positions, not necessarily giving any other direction towards a possible or future ballot.
Thank you very much, Councilmember File. City Attorney, there seems to be a question of whether or not there has been action taken on this.
So it's not a matter of action taken. It's a matter of using public facilities, which includes the actual, just your audio, using public comment. And so to be conservative, it's my belief that there is a pending ballot measure. And to be conservative, we should act accordingly. If I'm incorrect, then I invite Mr. Ingersoll to come back to another public comment. But because it's my understanding that there is a pending ballot measure, I just wanted to alert everyone that state law prohibits the use of public facilities to support or oppose. So right now, we just can't allow such public comment. Again, I apologize for the interruption.
And that's fine. I certainly agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Ingersoll.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Stacy Valenzuela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I just wanted to tonight make sure that the City Council was aware of how well Public Works did on the snow day in clearing the streets. A lot of happy residents, as well as Friday with the police response. A lot of happy residents again. There are some unhappy residents though in regards to PSE. And basically when they were first working on the bridge, a lot of times the power went out here on this side of the bridge, the 522 and 175th Street. And now they're having issues almost daily, several weeks over on the opposite side of the golf course. And I think possibly the city might want to have somebody look into that. Also, I wanted to bring up about the new Metro and Sound Transit plan. It's very, very important that the overpass for pedestrians is actually put on 73rd and comes across the street. There's already been a fatality at that corner. There just about a month ago, somebody hit the PG&E or PSE box there because they take that turn too wide. And we already have enough people crossing over now to where the light changes and half the people are cut off. When we have all the housing, there will be and the extra parking spots, there will be a lot more people. So I think that's very important. I also think it's very important that the affordable housing is real low and very low, true affordable housing, and not the market rate that is called affordable housing. That is definitely something that needs to be defined there, and it would be much appreciated. In regards to Squires Landing Park, a lot of the people that voted in the surveys that went on years ago before Squires was named, they did ask for a Native American name for the park, and that was kind of overlooked, and a lot of them still felt that did not go through on the surveys and that their surveys were not put to use. And I hope that this Native American name added to the park will correct the wrong from back then. And I think it really takes a lot to make those changes and come back and to increase the participation with the residents, because I do see that that is increasing, and this is really important to open a lot of avenues and a lot of camaraderie between the residents of Kenmore. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Rose Hendricks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Rose Hendricks. I live in Kenmore. I was calling in today to echo Stacey Valenzuela's comments as well, and mention that the pedestrian infrastructure for the proposed Sound Transit project that was presented today is really, really important. Specifically talking about the overpass and talking about bike infrastructure, which is something that came up in a few different working groups reading through the materials for today, but wasn't really part of any of the presented plans. Just somewhere to lock up your bike. It doesn't even have to be the fancy bike lockers that sort of just like a large bike rack, and like adding more capacity, especially because Kenmore is so close to the Burke-Gilman. That's a really unique and cool thing that Kenmore has. And if we can integrate a little better with that, I think that the project would be enriched. And having a pedestrian overpass is also really important because that thoroughfare is so broad and the light cycle is relatively short. And if you're increasing the pedestrian throughput there, there's going to be problems. And if you keep the light cycle the same. So I think an overpass would really strengthen the project. Yeah, all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. David Morton.
Yes, good evening, council members. I'm David Morton. I live near Redmond. Living near a hot mix asphalt facility is a lot like having the interior of your house painted. Let's say you hired a painter to paint your house's interior, but you found that breathing the paint fumes irritated your eyes, nose, throat, and lungs, gave you a headache, made you feel dizzy, lightheaded, and nauseated, and caused you to have trouble breathing and vision problems. You complained to the painter, and he jokingly told you that, well, at least you didn't get cancer and die. He suggested that perhaps you should have had your house painted with zero VOC paint that contains no volatile organic chemicals, or VOCs. You didn't know that paint fumes could affect people like that. So you decide that if you have the interior of your house painted again, zero VOC paint must be used. Later, you hire a painter to paint your house's interior with zero VOC paint. The painter assures you that he will use VOC-free paint, but when the job is done and you return to your house, you can smell the paint fumes, you get a headache, and all the other symptoms. See, what the painter didn't mention was that he diluted the zero VOC paint with paint thinner, because VOC-free paint is expensive and it was easier for him to use when he thinned it out. Although the Cadman asphalt facility in Kenmore has assured the city of Kenmore and concerned residents that Cadman uses nearly VOC-free PG58H22 performance-graded asphalt cement to make their asphalt paving mixes, many residents of Kenmore are smelling and breathing the nauseating stench of VOCs and PAHs from the Cadman facility. They also experience ill health effects from breathing the fumes, such as dizziness, headache, and trouble breathing. If it's true that Cadman uses PG58H22 and no other petroleum products in making their asphalt paving mixes, then there should be no overwhelming stench emitted by their facility. It seems possible and likely that solvents such as diesel and or kerosene are being added to the asphalt paving mix at the plant. This theory is consistent both with Cadman's claim of using PG58H22 and nearby residents' claims of breathing horrendous fumes from the plant. I have asked PSCAA to simply investigate this possibility. So far, no response. Thank you.
Thank you. Finley, followed by Elizabeth Mooney. Finley, presumably Phyllis Finley.
Good evening. My topic tonight is budget. Remember a few months ago when the budget was the big topic? Remember that the city was then and is now in a budget crisis so dire that a consultant was hired to help figure a way out? Are you remembering that as you move tonight to possibly approve consent agenda items E and F? Both of these items will significantly increase the already budgeted and approved amounts for these expenditures. If you approve consent item E, you are approving an overcost of $610,000. Your approval of consent item F increases that expenditure by $1.33 million. So with a simple yes, you are approving a budget overage of almost $2 million. Remember a few months ago when you voiced your dedication to cutting costs? Remember a few months ago when you voted not to raise property taxes that would increase revenue by a very vital $32,000 for the biennium? Remember the comment made by one of the city council members? I'll paraphrase. We aren't raising your taxes this time, but you can be sure the property tax increase will be in your future. And there were nods all around among the council. Are we waiting until your next opportunity to raise our property taxes because you as a council can't or won't downsize your expenditures between now and then? Remember how much you spent for the 2019 retreat? Oh, that was $14,402.49, including over $4,000 for food and lodging. Remember how much you spent for the 2020 retreat? Oh, that was $10,743.81, including almost $4,000 for food and lodging. Subtract the past amounts for food and lodging, and we can guess the 2021 Zoom retreat was $6,000 to $7,000. Add those 3 years together, and you get very close to $32,000. Remember the significance of that amount? When you're thinking of the 2022 retreat, perhaps you'll remember our budget crisis and opt to hold the retreat at your beautiful city hall. Rather than approving consent agenda items E and F as proposed, perhaps you could remember your vocal commitment to reducing expenses and put that into practice by revising the over budget amounts before a blanket vote of yes. Surely there are some expenses in those agenda items that can be eliminated or at least reduced. We're in a budget crisis, remember? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finley.
You're welcome.
Elizabeth Mooney.
Hi.
Hi, we can hear you.
I can't tell if you can see me.
We can see you.
Oh, great. I can't see me, but that's okay. I'm Elizabeth Mooney and I live in Kenmore. I want to mention that I do support David Morton's comment, and I appreciate that House Bill 1057 passed out of the House's Environment and Energy Committee. I really want to thank the city and the city's lobbyists and the community's support in supporting that House Bill 1057 that Representative Jerry Paulette wrote, and that was also supported and sponsored by Representative Javier Valdez. It was really appreciated that the staff invited our Kenmore Clean Air Coalition to help get the word out. And so I want to just say we want to keep doing that. We want to keep working with the city on achieving clean air and getting that word out that bikers and walkers on our Burt Gilman Trail will someday in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, be able to make valid complaints to Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, even if we don't live and work right where we smell nasty concerning and possibly toxic emissions from the existing asphalt facility that does not need to get monitored because of old standards. I also want to say that I am concerned about this air pollution that's still in Kenmore due to the heavy industry that is at our shoreline. And I'm concerned about our shoreline's water, air, and sediment, the toxins that are still there. And I would like to know from our city council, what are we going to promote from here on out as a vision and our actions on restoring health and the environment for our salmon restoration at our shoreline with our updates on our shoreline master plan? And is it possible that we could remove heavy industry and manufacturing on our shoreline so that we can provide the future for that joy of having salmon come back to our small and larger tributaries that are all connected to Puget Sound? We need to look carefully with our planning commission, I believe, on some of the wording that Ann Hurst, Janet Hayes, and I worked on to change, but we need help now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lori Burrows, or Lori Burrow. Lori Burrow, you're welcome to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me? This is actually John Burrow. Yeah. Hey, this is John Burrow. I'm a Kenmore resident. I would like to see added to tonight's agenda, and if not tonight's, then at your next regular meeting, the merger discussion between North Shore Fire Department and Woodinville Fire Department.
Does that complete your comment?
Sure does.
Thank you very much. I see no additional hands raised at this time.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Thank you all for your comments tonight. We certainly appreciate hearing from you, and we appreciate your taking time out of your busy day to attend the meeting tonight and let your voices be heard. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, just bear with me a second here, is going to be a discussion on House Bill 1083 concerning relocation assistance for tenants of closed or converted manufactured homes. Councilmember Shrebnick, do you want to speak about this, please?
I noticed this on the list that we recently got from Mayor Baker from our from our lobbyists. Yeah, let me just get to it here. This is a bill that Representative Paulette and Orwell and many other affordable housing advocates are sponsors. It's concerning relocation assistance for tenants of closed or converted mobile home parks. And we certainly have that as a potential issue in Kenmore. This legislation substantially increases the amount of assistance, and it clarifies kind of some of the procedural aspects of providing that assistance. And so I feel like, since it's so relevant to this, but potential situation in for our downtown mobile home parks, I would like to see us provide either a letter of support or statement of support, something simple. It doesn't take much staff time, hopefully. But
or have our lobbyists sign in
pardon?
favor, or have our lobbyists sign in
Oh,
favor.
yes, some expression of support.
Be supportive of the legislation.
Yes, thank you. That's it.
And I think the reason this is brought forward is because we're getting to cutoffs and stuff. And we've all expressed concern over assistance to some of the residents. Deputy Mayor.
Rob, do we know if our lobbyists have signed in support of this bill? And it's gone through 2 committees in the House so far. Do we know if they've been signing in on this bill or not?
I'm not exactly sure on this specific bill, and I haven't had a chance to ask her today, but I remember towards the beginning of session, she went over a number of bills, and there were a couple of them that had to do with mobile home parks that were helping residents of mobile home parks. And I gave her the general direction that anything that helps residents of mobile home parks sign in favor.
So would it be appropriate for us to just take a position on this at this point, Mr. City Manager?
Sure.
So I am also very supportive of this because as we all saw when we passed the legislation we passed, we need to do what we can to support those living in manufactured homes. This seems like a very small thing to become supportive of this legislation, and it is time critical. So would you care to make a motion?
Just a point of information clarification, please. I noticed on that legislative report, these bills are in our support status. So we are supporting them. I'd be happy to sign on to a letter of full support to go to committee, but I just want to point that out. It's in the support status sheet of the ledger.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure that our lobbyist knows to sign in and support and offer whatever support we can to ensure the passage of these.
Oh, absolutely. I just wouldn't want to cause any undue confusion to our community.
Right. That's why I checked with our city manager what he would prefer us to do. And there's certainly nothing that involves our community at this point. This is just legislation for any future actions that may happen. There's certainly nothing pending in our community. So
do we, it sounds like we don't need necessarily a motion then, or do we need a motion?
I don't know, city manager?
I know what your direction is, and
Great.
I'm if I haven't already, I'll definitely plan on telling our lobbyists to sign in favor.
That's all we need. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is staff report.
All right. Before I dive into the items that are actually listed on the agenda, I just want to mention the snow event we had about 10 days ago. We did receive a pretty healthy deposit of snow. And I just want to publicly thank Jennifer Gordon, our Public Works Operations Manager, and her team. They were well prepared for it. They had the materials and the equipment all ready to go, and they had the staffing. And as you also know, we have an interlocal agreement with North Shore Utility District to provide supplemental plowing for us. And so we had a total of about 6 snow plows out round the clock during those several days. And 3 of them were us and 3 of them were North Shore Utility District. You couldn't tell that they were North Shore Utility District because while they were plowing snow, they had a City of Kenmore logo magnet on the side of their trucks. So it would, for the public, it all looked like Kenmore, but it was definitely a big help by the North Shore Utility District. So given the nature of snow in Kenmore and our climate and the physics of how it sticks to our asphalt, we tried to warn everybody through public messaging, hey, don't expect the roads just to be, scraped down to bare asphalt. That's not the way it works here in the Pacific Northwest. But we were able to keep new snow from accumulating too much, so that when it did melt, it melted faster and got to bare asphalt much quicker than had we not been plowing the roads. So we were able to hit residential streets as well as our arterials, and was just really happy with that response. So it was nothing like 2 years ago, though, when it lasted for days and days, and we were a brand new public works department. You may remember we had just barely taken over public works from our neighboring city, and we were hit with that big 10-day snowstorm, or however long it was. So also want to give a pandemic update. City Hall continues to be closed to the public, although our receptionists are answering phones every day, and we're continuing to keep our employees working. Our field employees, obviously, they're able to go out and do their work and do inspections and maintenance of parks and roads and surface water systems and all those things. Our office employees mostly are working from home, though, and they're still able to be productive. We're watching the numbers. We're paying attention from any new guidance that we can get from the governor. You may have been also watching the numbers steadily decline as far as new cases. And I would like to share my screen if possible. I think I'm a co-host, so I think I'm allowed to. All right, can you see all that? So this is just public data on King County's website. And you can see this graph is positive cases in King County. And this is a really good thing. You know, we're getting back down to, you know, summer levels here. And if you look at deaths in King County, that number is going down pretty steady as well. And then you can change the data for Kenmore. And well, here are deaths in Kenmore. Unfortunately, we did have another death at the beginning of, or mid-January. And positive cases, you can see the numbers declining in Kenmore as well. Hospitalized cases, we have not had a hospitalized case since a new hospitalized case since January 6th. The numbers are trending in the right direction. And so, you know, we're trying to position ourselves to be ready to open up more when it comes to city business, but we don't know when that is. We don't know if it'll be a couple months from now or many months from now, but we're wanting to make sure that we're ready for it. And then if I can also shift gears to federal funding, I'll go ahead and stop sharing. So you probably also saw that the state just passed a COVID relief bill and the governor signed it. It's $2.2 billion of federal funding that's being passed through. We are not going to see any of it directly, but there's a lot of money that the state's going to administer, including $365 million for tenants and utility assistance, and also $240 million for business assistance. And there's lists of other things, including public health and those sorts of things. So I'm excited that the state was able to pass that. In addition, you know, we're keeping a close eye on what's going on with Congress and the current bill that's being discussed in the US House of Representatives. And that bill proposed by the Democrats includes direct assistance to state and local governments. There's some, you know, opposition from the other side of the aisle on that. But if it passes, Kenmore could get some direct assistance. How much still remains to be seen. Also, what restrictions would be on it also remain to be seen. Preliminarily, I'm seeing that if such a bill were to pass, that the funds would probably need to be used to respond to the pandemic or to replace lost revenue. And so we'd need to figure out that piece of it. I don't think it would just be free money that we'd be able to put in the bank. We'd have to put it to work towards the pandemic or to replace lost revenue. And so how much we could do that and all that, so we still have to figure out. I don't want to speculate too much because the bill could change a lot between now and when it gets passed, or if that part of the bill gets passed at all. So, but I just want you to know that we're keeping an eye on that. Also moving on to plastic bag emergency proclamation. So as I've reported to you in the past, and Don Rayton and Deputy Mayor Herbig also helped us figure this out, but we cannot bring back our plastic bag ban right now because of the state preemption is still in place, preempting us from doing that. But there is House Bill 1053 that's going through the process. I believe it's in House Rules Committee right now. And when that passes, that we will be able to reinstate our plastic bag ban. So we're keeping an eye on that, but so far it's in the House, hasn't gone to the Senate yet. Don't think it's an expedited bill unless anybody knows otherwise. Yeah, okay. So, but when that passes or looks like it's going to pass, then we'll set things in motion to bring back the plastic bag ban. I think that's the direction I heard from you all. And then last but not least, public works site selection. Last year, you told us to go back to the drawing board on site selection criteria. And so we as staff have been working on that, on redoing the criteria. And we'll be bringing proposed site selection criteria for the public workshop to you, I believe on March 15th. That's tentative, March 15th. That's the third Monday in March. And we plan to have a discussion and get direction from you on site selection criteria for public workshop. And that's all I have.
All right. Councilmember comments, reports. Councilmember O'Kane.
I have a couple items this evening. I think they're brief. One, I just want to speak to our public commenters and just say how important your voices are. And as one of my common statements is your voice matters, and it truly does. And I'm going to speak directly to Elizabeth Mooney's comment tonight about salmon habitat restoration and the vision for Kenmore. And I just want to share, we need to hear your voices to help us build our vision and ensure that we raise it to the right priority for our community and region. So I want to thank you for asking about it and being interested in what you're going to see from us in the future. I also am on the VIII committee, and I'll be making a comment here in about a month about how things are going for Kenmore with VIII. So I'll provide something soon in a fuller statement, but our community voices matter. Salmon habitat restoration is a top priority for the region, and we are in a critical location. So we need to hear from you, and so does the rest of the state. So it's important that you bring your voices forward to ensure that we have a full comprehensive vision of the good, great work that we can do here at the north end of Lake Washington and the Sammamish Slough. So I want to thank you for raising that. And I know we've had other community members as well, but it's not a one-time thing. Your voices need to be heard. So thank you. And I also wanted to highlight environmental stewardship, climate action, and habitat restoration did make it to our council priorities up to position number 2 this year, which I am just thrilled about, and I'm sure our community is very happy about too. So it is a top priority for us. Also on the consent agenda were the council rules. And I just wanted to say I'm thankful for all the work that we put into them. I want to shine a light and a reminder on why we went through this process and what some of the changes were and how important it is that we uphold them. And it's hard because sometimes a little thing, just like, why not just do this time, can cause more disorder than we expect. And so we went into greater detail on the segregation of duties, the separation of duties between council and staff. We as council have the responsibility to set direction as a policy body. We work as a whole and move forward on those items. Staff, after we've set direction, moves on those things. And they're responsible for that level of work. In one-on-ones, we can ask questions and seek clarification and information and maybe provide some insights on what we understand. But as far as our role as a body, it's as a whole. And staff, and setting direction, and staff moves forward following our direction. Once we give them direction, our hands are off. And I just wanted to draw attention to that because we put a great deal of work in there. And I had some concerns that maybe, I just want to make sure that we are all very clear on the importance of the separation of duties there, and that we are moving forward and with these great new updated rules that have the added clarification between the two. Because it's really, for us to function as a whole, a body of the whole, we must uphold our rules that we worked so diligently to improve this year. And I just want to thank everybody for their participation in that process. It was a big lift. So thank you. And I will, I'm done. So it was a great meeting this evening. So thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thanks to our Public Works Department for taking care of us during the recent snowstorm. Again, I grew up here and I do not recall having ever seen a snowplow. There must have been one, but I don't recall the streets being as clear as they have been in recent years. So that's great. But even more wonderful is to see the numbers go down on the COVID spread and the associated hospitalization and mortality and the rest of it. I join everybody, and I'm sure and really hoping that we continue holding in the right direction. Thanks.
Councilmember Kogler.
Good evening. I have a couple of things to share tonight. One is that I also wanted to share kudos to the Public Works and also our public safety for the recent incident that happened in Kenmore. But specifically, I wanted to call out the communications that I thought was really great, that worked in tandem with the work that the city was doing and just getting information out through email and social media to let people know, stay home, roads aren't safe, we'll get to it as soon as possible. I thought that was really helpful. So thank you for doing that. I also wanted to share that I submitted interest and was selected to serve on the Sound Cities Association Equity and Inclusion Cabinet on behalf of the city. And thirdly, that I attended the ETP meeting this past week and wanted to reiterate, I know the city is going to get this information out to all of our residents, but I just wanted to emphasize that it's going to be really important for Kenmore residents to attend the Sound Transit Open House that's going to take place on March 2nd to speak about the 522 bus rapid transit. And I believe advanced registration is necessary to attend that to get the link. So hopefully we'll get information out to everyone. Hopefully they'll also get a postcard that I think is being mailed out to people as well. But I just can't emphasize enough how important it is for residents to go to that and make sure their voices are heard if they care about rapid transit on 522. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shrevenick.
Well, by way of thanking staff for all their great work, I happened to run into two neighbors on a walk today separately, and they each commented. One said they were excited about seeing the flyer of all the improvements on 68th and the parks, and spontaneously said, "This is why I love Kenmore." The other said, again, thank you for plowing. It's never happened before last year. It's amazing. And, again, just people are really seeing what city staff are doing, and it makes a difference every day. Public workshop, I did have a quick question for Rob, and then I have a couple other comments. I'll do the other comments first. Fire department, I think we have repeatedly asked for the folks proposing this to come and present to us and with the details of the money and the service changes that they expect. And that has not occurred. And it would be nice if there was a way to put that on the agenda and actually get a presentation. I would personally like to have a discussion of this because I think it's important. And the last thing, second to the last thing, I concur with Councilmember O'Kane. I'm excited about our council rules. I think they're much clearer and, clarifies, we don't, when we have a concern about something that's happening in terms of what staff are doing, we go through Rob, we don't go directly to staff, we hold ourselves to our one-on-ones unless there's a fire, and there rarely is. New ideas are agenda items like we did today if they really are on fire. But most of the time, can be brought, as we just did, to council member comments. And then the last thing was just a question for Rob. I think a few of us, Milton, Councilmember Curtis was instrumental in kind of coming up with the public work criteria. And I know Councilmember O'Kane and I also worked on that. Did you ever receive that? Or I'm just curious where that was. Is that being used? Okay, good. Okay.
For sure. Yeah, and we're going to have something that's different but similar.
Sure.
And we'll show the similarities and differences of the subcommittee compared to
Awesome,
our
thanks.
recommendation.
Wonderful. Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Well, let's see. First, I'd like to add a topic to an upcoming agenda on the firefighter merger, and not just the topic. I want to re-echo what Councilmember Shrevenick did mention, that it would be nice to hear some more detail. But besides more detail, it would be nice to have the fire chief, a commissioner, and the union president in front of us, giving us an update on this. It's good for our community. It's good for our better understanding, and it's been a long time coming. So I'd like to see, when do you think we can get that on the agenda, Rob?
It's up to you guys and the fire district. We can reach out to them and find out what works for them and get the latest on whether it is officially on for the April ballot and all that good stuff.
Okay, and this also would require my fellow colleagues to support this recommendation. Do my fellow colleagues support this recommendation? That would be a yes or no needed. I see some head nods, a question from maybe council member.
Yeah, as long as both sides were represented, and yes. And I see that our city attorney is, eagle eye is on this discussion here. And it would be wise to have both sides, right?
Yes, and that's also required by law. So you can, of course, schedule on an upcoming agenda. What we as staff simply need to do is provide the required notice on the agenda, and we will also provide an opportunity to the public and council members to speak both in favor and in opposition. So it's just an equal fairness type of thing. But yes, you can definitely put it on the agenda, and when we find out what date it is, we'll make sure that that notice is very clear to the public.
Thank you. And I'll just go back to updates now then. I've been serving on the National League of Cities Federal Committee of Human Development, and we've been weighing in on the federal COVID package. And so like our council manager did say that the federal funding package looks good right now. It's off to a new committee, an oversight committee. It's actually going to provide a little bit more funding for smaller towns and cities this time. So it's been a small adjustment, while the nominations look about the same for what we will receive for Kenmore. We'll have to wait and see yet a little bit further. I attended City Action Days and the Eastside Transportation meeting. I want to thank our Superintendent, Dr. Michelle Reed, and congratulate her on her winning the National Superintendent of the Year award. That's a real accomplishment and something we should really be proud of as a community and for our schools and families. We have a very sought out school district. Ann McFarland is going to be offering a new training opportunity for planning commissioners. It might be something that our planning commissioners are interested in. And I want to thank our Public Works Department, the NUD, and our police chief and his team for doing outstanding work to support our community. And lastly, I was just appointed to the North Shore School District Capital Bond Planning Task Force. So I will be seeking out our city attorney's advice just for some nice clear boundaries so we don't have any possible quasi-judicial issues to come up ahead. So that's it.
Deputy Mayor.
Always hard going last because everybody else has said a lot of the things I was going to say. I will say it was nice when I was out taking the walk and took the picture you see behind me. It was nice to see the plows out and about clearing the roads. Other than that, I don't really have anything to add tonight. Thank you to staff. It's all been said already.
Yeah, I think one of the best decisions that this council ever made was to bring Public Works in-house. The way they performed 2 years ago with that snowstorm and the way they performed this year, I know it's all been said, but I've had phone calls from people who've told me they came out of Briar and through the slush and they hit Kenmore and the streets were perfectly plowed, and what a difference it was. I've had people call me from coming the other way, from Kirkland, and slushing through the streets in Kirkland, and they hit Kenmore and how beautiful the streets were. I mean, I wrote Jennifer, the crew is just absolutely amazing. And there she is, peeking in. Miss Gordon, all of us truly appreciate you and your crew. What a heck of a job you guys have done.
Thank you so much. I am so proud of everybody, and it's such a night and day difference having our own crew. It's been,
isn't it though?
Been awesome. It's amazing. Yeah.
And I'm proud of the crew too, but I'm really proud of you and the way that you have really directed this group. You're amazing, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's no further business to come before us. We are adjourned.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.